Welcome to Daily Debrief, your primer on international news brought to you by People's Dispatch. I'm Swastika, and today, in our end of the year episode, we'll be taking a look at some of the major issues that made the news, affected our lives, and will have a deep impact on 2022 as well. I'm joined by Prashant for this segment. Now, Prashant, welcome to Daily Debrief and the very final episode of this year. A lot has happened in the year 2021, Prashant. How do you assess the year that is now going by?
Well, a very special year.
Yeah.
Among other things, we started this show, so
Yes.
always happy to mark that anniversary as well. But the fact is, jokes aside, that this has been a very eventful year. Like you said, a lot of things. In some ways, there's been a lot of continuity.
Yes.
If you look at the various happenings around the world, but there have also been substantial changes. Maybe like any year, that's probably the evaluation you reach. But each year, of course, has its own unique features, its own unique characteristics. Some of the constant trends, of course, being the fact that oppression, exploitation, atrocities on the poor, atrocities on the working people continue. At the same time, there is a continuous sense of resistance as well, protest movements, large mobilizations, gatherings, even small initiatives by people who are suffering, people who are bearing the brunt of oppression, fighting back, demanding their rights, seeking that, telling the governments that they cannot be treated like this, telling those in power, telling the capital, telling big business that they cannot be treated like this. These struggles continuing across the globe. And at People's Dispatch, one of our constant areas of focus has been actually covering many of these struggles, which show that the world is not just about those in power. The world is not just about those who are seated in the big halls of business, who have a lot of money, and the billionaires and the trillionaires, the people who go to space as tourists. It's also about the people on the streets who are consistently fighting for a better life, who are consistently struggling to change the world they live in, to consistently bring a better world for their children as well. So that's really that has always continued. That has never stopped. It's a continuous process in history. It will be a process in 2022 as well. Of course, the key point being that 2020 and 2021 distinguished from many other years by the fact that these are the pandemic years. Many people consider them to be almost lost years in some senses. Yes. But we also see that a lot has been gained and achieved, and we've been covering some of these over the past few days as well. So mixed feelings, I would say, at the end of 2021.
Actually, Prashant, you mentioned the pandemic, and that is something really important because somehow some of us thought that the year that is now going by, 2021, many things were beginning to recover. But we were hit by a new variant, and there is a new havoc around the global order again. So how do you now look at the year that we're now entering in, which is 2022, vis-a-vis the pandemic?
Right. So like you said, I think by the end of 2020, at least a lot of people were hopeful. But then we saw new waves take place, the Delta variant especially spreading very rapidly in many countries. For us, of course, in India in April and May, these were two very horrible months, shortages of oxygen, shortage of hospital beds, and these were actually seen in many countries. So what in 2021 has seen vis-a-vis the pandemic is pretty much the same as 2020, in the sense that there has been a complete failure of the global order in terms of ensuring that this pandemic can be controlled. And now this extends to every aspect of the pandemic itself, from the spread of it to its treatment, to medication, to vaccines. In every aspect, we see that the pandemic served as a way in which certain companies, the rich in the global north countries, could actually make more money. The most of the people, both in the global north and in the global south, but especially in the global south, continue to suffer. And that's something very important that we need to keep remembering, that they have been denied access to a lot of medication, to a lot of treatment. Health workers, for instance, really severely underpaid in many parts of the world, continuing to hold struggles. People's Health Dispatch, which is a project associated with us, we have been covering many of these struggles across the world by health workers. Recently, for instance, in Turkey, many other places, from small islands to some of the biggest countries in the world. And in all these places, we have seen that they have been demanding, basic necessities such as decent pay, for that matter, then no contractualization of work, that they be offered permanent jobs, they be offered good equipment, they be offered sane working hours. All these demands have continuously been raised by health workers. And we've also seen that when you look at the pricing of some of these vaccines, when we look at the distribution, all of these paint a very sad picture of how the world is organized right now. And I think the pandemic has exacerbated, which you said time and again, the pandemic has exacerbated many of the inequalities present in the world today. It has actually exposed how horribly our society is structured. And I think that this has been one of the major learnings of 2021 as well. And there were many optimistic predictions that 2021 would see the end of the pandemic. Of course, it's a virus, which means it will mutate. There'll be new variants taking place that can't be completely controlled. But as a society, have we done everything in our maximum capacity? No. So that's the answer.
Actually, that's the part that leads us to the next question, the distribution of the vaccines. There was a big, one could see the divide between the global north and the global south. If you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Right. So I think one number demonstrates it very clearly. Right. As far as I understand, as of December 22nd, I think around 9% of Africa's population was fully vaccinated. That is an atrocious number. Just imagine 9% of a huge continent.
Yeah.
Its people have only 9% have been fully vaccinated. Whereas if you look at some of the countries in the global north, we are nearing, a massive amount of coverage, right? So people are getting third doses, people are getting fourth doses, booster doses. And this is the inequality that exists right now. And the United Nations, the World Health Organization, people's movements across the world had been saying from day one. And 2021 is important because this is the year when the vaccination really picked up across the world, right? People had been saying from day one that there was a chance of vaccine apartheid, that some big companies would actually make a lot of profits, countries would hoard vaccines, and the poor people of the world would not be able to receive any. And that is exactly what has happened. So we see that people in the global south continue to remain vulnerable to this disease just because there is a massive inequity, a massive imbalance in how vaccines are distributed. And why is that so? Mainly because of the fact that intellectual property rights for these vaccines are held by a handful of companies, right? So, for instance, the World Trade Organization, India and South Africa have been demanding that all intellectual property rights associated with medical products related to do with COVID-19 be waived, so that production of these vaccines can take place in global south countries as well. Because it is important to note that countries in the global south often have the capacity to produce these vaccines, but they do not have the intellectual property rights. So this crisis has not been treated by the global community, by the world leadership, by the pharmaceutical companies as a crisis of humanity. And that's something I think that vaccines are probably the best example of that issue today, because there is no other instance. Like I said, some of these numbers are shocking, and they're going to continue to 2022. Now estimates say that the full vaccination could take up to 2024. Just imagine, the vaccine was developed by 2020. So the development was not the problem. Earlier you could say that it took a long time to develop medicines or develop cures for these. But that's not the problem here. The problem is the distribution. And the distribution is a problem because of the inequities that exist in the world order today.
We'll come back to you, Prashant. Stay with us. So yesterday on the show, we analyzed the impact of the biggest developments in Afghanistan in 2021. Today, we'll be moving to another region which saw dramatic developments. We're talking about West Asia. Now, Prashant, a lot has been happening in West Asia, of course. If you could actually tell us what is happening, what has happened in the year in Palestine, and where does it stand as of now?
Right. So 2021, a very important and unfortunate year actually for the Palestinians, because we saw one of the most horrible instances of atrocities in recent times, which is the 11-day bombing of Gaza, which killed hundreds of people, destroyed infrastructure, health infrastructure, water supplies, electricity, all of that massively destroyed. Continuous, merciless bombing. The entire world community kept asking them with various degrees of sincerity to stop. Israel refused, and Israel basically showed once again that it had complete impunity when it comes to how it acts towards the Palestinians. Now, there was a reason there was a build-up to this where there were attempts to evict families in East Jerusalem from Sheikh Jarrah. There were continuous attacks on the Al-Aqsa Mosque in East Jerusalem. Continuous violations of Palestinians' rights against which the Palestinians were protesting. And that it is in this context that Israel, of course, bombed Gaza as well. So these atrocities nonetheless continued after. We saw that various Palestinian organizations declared as terrorists, some of the most famous organizations in the region being declared as terrorists. We saw continuous attacks by settlers against Palestinian people. We saw the announcement of new settlements that Israel has set both in the occupied territories and in the occupied Golan Heights. And we have seen, multiple declarations by Israeli politicians which indicated they are not interested in peace. For instance, Naftali Bennett, the new prime minister of Israel in August, said that there was no peace process with the Palestinians. So all this, I think, going to show that Israeli impunity, Israeli extremism is moving year by year is progressing further to the right. And this is not something that was just due to Benjamin Netanyahu alone. This is the entire Israeli political spectrum that is moving consistently and completely towards the right. Right. So that is one aspect of it. On the other hand, it's important to note that the resistance of the Palestinians has been steady, it has been steadfast, and it has actually brought in more and more people over the course of time. And in fact, one of the reasons Israel was especially worried before the May bombing was the fact that an entirely new generation of Palestinians across the occupied territories was participating in these protests. During the 11-day bombing, it became increasingly clear that a large number of Palestinian citizens of Israel were participating in these protests. They were also attacked by settler groups and other groups. But nonetheless, the fact is that there has been a widespread resistance inside the occupied territories, inside Palestine, and that is only definitely going to grow. So it's a larger question for Israel as to how long it can sustain this occupation, how long it can sustain this policy of brutal oppression against people in the West Bank, against Gaza, East Jerusalem, its own Palestinian citizens. How long can they go on, keep on doing this, considering the fact that the resistance is not going to stop? It's very, very clear about it. So Israel can cry, they keep saying that these are terrorists as long as they want, but the fact is that world opinion is also shifting. For instance, the fact that the BDS movement globally is increasingly becoming more and more powerful, more and more people are being aware of this. So I think these are some of these things, these are some of the interesting developments and changes that are taking place.
Staying with West Asia, another big development that is ongoing right now is the talks on Iran nuclear deal. And we've been covering that consistently. If you could tell us if there's been any breakthrough in these talks so far.
Right. So it's interesting because in the beginning of the year, Trump was leaving. Joe Biden was coming to power. There was a hope that Biden, who had promised to re-enter the Iran nuclear deal, would actually want to do so. And like many experts have pointed out, there was actually a window immediately after Biden came to power to bring the nuclear deal quickly to a fold. But they didn't do that because Biden and the U.S. administration held out, thinking that they could get more concessions from Iran. That actually, I think, really what they actually did was make Iran more angry, make Iran more suspicious of the US motives. And since then, the talks have pretty much been in doldrums. The new Iranian government came to power. There have been multiple rounds of talks, I believe even one round of talks going on pretty much right now. Nonetheless, we don't really seem very close to an agreement because there are huge gaps between these two positions. The Americans want Iran basically to surrender its sovereignty. Iran, on the other hand, is very clear that it wants all the sanctions removed.
Yes.
And it wants concrete guarantees from the United States that the future administration will not walk out of the deal. So these are these two very clear positions which neither country seems very eager to move. There's been some positive developments. It does look like discussions will continue. At least it's better than the threats of war that have been coming from Israel, for instance, that have been coming from certain sections of the United States. So as long as there are talks, it's a good sign. We have to be very clear about this. On the other hand, we might be quite far from an agreement as of yet because of the sheer distance. The unfortunate thing, like I said, is that there was a chance for this deal to be revived again. And that was probably the early few months of 2021. And people across the world were full of hope because Iran was clearly waiting because the sanctions had really affected its economic situation. The United States was theoretically committed to it, but then they went back on their earlier promises, and now the region continues to be in instability. There is always these risks and threats of a conflict. All it takes is one small spark and it could light up the entire region. So a very dangerous scenario even now in Iran and West Asia specifically. One can only hope that the discussions will solidify, they'll have more concrete outcomes, and we'll be looking at a more positive 2022 with respect to that.
Also, what about some other countries of this region, Prashant, if you could tell us?
Yeah, I think two important countries to note. One is Iraq and one is Lebanon. Iraq had elections, landmark elections, of course. No real no real final government yet. Still, there's a lot of confusion over it. An important thing, of course, is that the United States will soon be withdrawing from Iraq. Another landmark moment after Afghanistan.
Hopefully.
Another basically failed invasion, for lack of a better word, because there is a growing resistance in Iraq to the presence of US troops. Whether there will be political stability in Iraq is a big question. There were massive protests from 2019 onwards. The elections don't really seem to have solved those problems because they're much deeper than that. So Iraq in the next few years, how it's going to go ahead is one very important question. Lebanon, another very, very important country because it has again been in a massive crisis for many years right now. The United States is, of course, peripherally involved. So is Israel, very strongly involved. But some of the other countries, like the Gulf countries, have been really putting pressure on Lebanon in order to try to destroy Hezbollah, which is one of the leading forces there. And a new government came to power, of course, after a long time. But the Gulf countries have been trying to squeeze Lebanon as much as possible. So that again is another important country we need to watch. Slightly expanding the region. Tunisia, very important developments going on there. Egypt, very important developments. So a lot of, and then of course there's Libya, which is another big story altogether. So this region is really, Middle East and North Africa region is really, really on the boil, so to speak. A lot of forces pushing and pulling in various ways. The role of the United States and Israel, like I earlier said, cannot be discounted because it is very strong, and they play the role of spoilsport and kind of a disruptor in many of these issues. But overall, we need to see in 2022 how this will progress.
Yeah, that's a lot to keep an eye on, and our teams will do that for sure. And finally, since we're recording from India, we'll also take a look at some of the major developments in this year. Prashant, this year has been massive when it comes to the way in which the farmers' struggle unfolded in this country. If you could tell us some of the highlights and where India stands today.
Again, difficult question considering India's population, but two or three things. One, like you said, the farmers' struggle changed the face of India. There's no real way to, no other way to really explain it, because massive protests stretching on for over a year, hundreds of thousands of people at any point of time, thousands of people camping on the outskirts of the capital, Delhi, many miles away from their home, saying that they would stay there until their demands were met, which was a withdrawal of those 3 farm laws. Farmers were afraid that these laws would bring corporates into agriculture, destroy their livelihood, and they were able to actually achieve it, which is a big thing, because nobody had anticipated that a government would retreat despite these protests. So big victory for the farmers over there.
Yes.
On the other hand, a lot of unfortunate incidents as well. We talked about the second wave of COVID, the kind of horror that came during that time. Late March, April and May was really unprecedented. The number of deaths that took place, some haunting visuals from across the country. We have seen a massive decline in political freedom in some senses. There have been more attacks on the media by various state agencies. There have been crackdowns against people who are dissenting. Now, a number of political prisoners as well, including some journalists also. Generally, there's been a deterioration of the democratic space, one could say, because even institutions like the media, for that matter, even the judiciary, there have been many questions raised as to whether they're doing their job of being pillars of democracy and raising the right kind of questions and providing the right kind of checks and balances. So 2022 is going to see some crucial elections coming, including in the largest state of India, that's Uttar Pradesh. Whether the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, what will be its performance, will be a huge factor in determining India's future in the coming months as well.
Absolutely.
We've also seen the continuing rise of right-wing extremism in the country, including a very recent event where there was calls for genocide, calls for the killing of Muslims, open calls, including by some who were close to the ruling party.
Yes.
And many of these comments have been amplified by those associated with the ruling party as well. So that's again a very dangerous trend that is rising in India. So overall, I think we are going into 2022 with India as, of course, a very proud democracy, but the democratic space is increasingly under threat. The rights of citizens are increasingly under threat. People are protesting. People are rising up against many of these problematic decisions, problematic moves by the government. There are battles going on in court, on the street, everywhere. But who will ultimately, how will these ultimately turn out is still very much up in the air. Depends on the nature of popular mobilizations as well. So that's India for 2021.
Well, thank you, Prashant. Well, that's all that we have from our team at Daily Debrief this year. Do come back and tune into our show next year. Take care and have a good, happy new year. Thank you.